very optimistic with the new administration that we've established competence. It's a pretty low bar, but competence to me is the key word. And of course, one of the things that's represented in moving forward as a new administration is inclusion. And one of the things that has always got the attention of the rest of the world and many of us here in our country is the fact that we don't have a woman that's led our country in our entire history. And now we have the highest ranking woman. That glass ceiling has been broken as far as I'm concerned with Kamala Harris now being our vice president, not just Southeast Asian as well as, African-American woman going forward and a woman going forward. All those ceilings have been broken with the administration, but it's deeper than that. We're seeing people at the cabinet level that are reflecting one of our greatest strengths. Our unity is our strength as a country, but our unity is also strengthened by our diversity. So you're seeing that reflected in the cabinet, and that's another strong statement from this administration. The other key word is urgency. We have an urgent situation. The COVID crisis is just devastating. Over 400,000 Americans losing their lives, averaging over 4,000 a week in terms of deaths. And the island was in a situation until September where it was really below that state average. But now with the state average around 4.85 and the island average of 7.25 in terms of the rise in the average daily cases, that's been unsettling, I know, to everyone. And I just want to be clear to everyone that's there that the over 1,000 people that contracted it and certainly the 4 people that died as a result of this, that my heart goes out to them. And we want to make sure we're doing everything we can do to make sure that at the local level as well as nationally, we're dealing with this. And this new administration is taking that as their #1 priority. Sadly, they found out and reported recently, they were almost starting from scratch in so many respects, but starting nonetheless. They're going to attack this. They're going to make sure they're doing everything from a federal level to try and make sure in the first 100 days there's 100 million vaccines that are instituted. They're going to make sure that they're using the Defense Production Act to use that national power when it's necessary, so we're not running out of important protective equipment supplies that we ran out of before in the spring and the summer. And we're going to make sure that research continues to be done. Research on the vaccines as they go forward, but also on treatment. There's not enough talk that's really, I think, been discussed about the need for treatment. We have to learn to do more in terms of treating this infection when people get it and making it less lethal and making sure that the symptoms maybe are reduced in the process. Contact tracing is so important because as we hopefully approaching the summer, knock this curve down and the vaccines start to take hold, if things flare up, we'll be able to know where they've happened and be able to isolate it. It's very difficult. I know in Nantucket, there was a problem trying to trace back where some of the infections came from, where it was springing through. We have to do a better job in contact tracing going forward once we're, beginning to overcome this. So that remains the #1 priority of the Biden administration. Obviously, it's the most critical. But the secondary effect, layered on a very fragile economy to begin with, was the effect of this terrible pandemic on our economy. And we're going to have to need as much resource from the federal government as we can garner. The states can't do this themselves. Local communities have been hit hard themselves. Their budgets have been hit hard themselves as a result of this. So we're moving in with still another plan and resource-based plan to deal with the economic impacts. Now, as I mentioned in the past to people, we've neglected our infrastructure in this country for decades. So there's actually a combination of this neglect needing to be addressed and the need to revitalize the economy. So we can do the two things at the same time. So it's just not an economic stimulus for the sake of an economic stimulus. This is necessary. And I think we're going to have, I hope we're going to have great cooperation around this issue. We really are in a position to bring forth an historic leveled response to infrastructure, a green infrastructure, a modern infrastructure, not going back to antiquated highway networks that have outlived their usefulness, but looking forward, broadband, better communication. We've learned some of the cracks in the system during this pandemic in the availability of broadband and how necessary it is. The expansion of this coming out of this pandemic, it will be built in too. Telemedicine, people working remotely, there's going to be enormous demands placed on our broadband networks. And we're going to have to build an infrastructure to cope for that if we're going to compete economically. So that's the center point of where this administration is going. It's like the big 1-2 punch. Let's attack the pandemic. Number two, let's move into a recovery that's necessary. And you're going to see them focus on those big, big issues. In the meantime, I think they're going to deal with issues and the effect of dealing with something that's orderly, something that is fixing a broken system in immigration. Hopefully that includes H-2B issues, JUN issues too that are important, but also coping with the fact that, again, these issues haven't been addressed, taking this opportunity to make sure, what are we going to do with 11 million people that are here undocumented? Even the most strident and conservative members on the Republican side have said, as they've run for president, we're not going to deport 11 million people. What do you do? So we have to construct a plan to deal with that. The DACA people, that should be resolved. I think it's been resolved by executive order already by the Biden administration, but really Congress should put some stability behind that so that those 700,000 plus people who came here as a child, know no other country, are already working and serving in the military, that they don't have a cloud over their head and their families don't have a cloud over their head. So I think in terms of education, and it's great to see in Nantucket that they're able to go back to part-time in-class learning right now for the time being. But we have to do a lot with education at all levels of education, making it more affordable for young people so they're not in debt the rest of their lives with school tuition loans, and also make sure that funding is there so that we have as competitive an education system as any other Western country or modern country that we are going to compete against. So the list is long. Dealing with environmental issues and climate change, a huge change. Day number one, this administration put us back into the Paris Climate Accord. Those of us that live in this part of the country, live in oceanfront areas and see the direct effects of sea level rise, warming, see the effects on our storms, see the effects on erosion. We know that we have to deal with the climate change issue. It's one of the existential issues we face globally, and the U.S. shouldn't be pulling away from the rest of the world. We should be advancing and leading the world in this. If we do that, we'll not only be moving to try and deal with climate change issues, but we'll be helping our economy at the same time, because that's going to be the part of economic growth that's going to grow at twice the pace of the rest of our economy and create new jobs. And we don't want those jobs and businesses in another country. We want them here in the United States. So the big issues, so when you're asking the difference with the administration, I look at it as those big issues, dealing with COVID, an economic recovery, infrastructure, climate change. A lot of those issues overlap, and we have an opportunity to deal with them at once. Then on the security side, we should open ourselves up to the rest of the world. It's good for our diplomacy. It's good for peace. It's good for democracy. We've taken a back seat over these years. The committee I serve with, I'm in touch with world leaders every week. And quietly, they've been hoping the U.S. will re-engage. They said not just for the benefits of their own country or our country, but they say they're not going to be successful without us. In one sense, it's complementary. They're saying we can't do this without the United States. In the other sense, we've been taking a back seat and go it alone in our strategy for a while. Big changes, an entire different outlook. And I haven't even mentioned the system of justice and dealing with racial strife that we dealt with and systemic racism we dealt with over the course of the summer, where it came to a climax, but nevertheless has to be addressed. And we have to have a justice system that reflects that as well. I think when you're asking, what am I expecting out of the administration? Those are big items, major issues, but we have to deal with them. And if we do as a country, all these things I mentioned, our security, our economy, our health, our ability to live and our children to live in this world going forward will be benefited. But we won't be successful globally if the United States isn't there leading the way. So it sounds enormously ambitious, but that's what our country's about. And so you can tell I'm excited about the huge directional change that our country's taken with this administration.